Hello, fellow writers. I'm Lewis. That over there is Tolkien, and you have found the Scripturient Society.
Welcome back, everybody, to your favorite writing podcast. That over there is Karissa Harlow, aka Lewis, aka Catherine, her dark alter ego. I am Ash O'Rourke, aka Tolkien, and I have a cold today, and I just immediately gave Karissa fair warning. I'm giving all of y'all fair warning. So if I sound gross or I cough or I clear my throat, I will try to cut it out of the audio, but if I forget to or I miss one, I'm sorry. I'm suffering like as loudly as
Aw,
possible through this day. I should say as
that
quietly as
sucks.
possible, but I feel like people
Oh,
think I'm being as loud as possible. I'm really
mm,
trying not to.
right.
Um,
There's really only so much you can do when you have a cold. You're like, I'm sorry, I
yeah,
have to sneeze, I have to cough, or I'm going to suffocate.
gonna
So,
literally suffocate and die. Exactly. And then I'm also PMSing, which is like a separate issue, but like just is
mm.
making me feel all around awful. Like I got a message from one of my coworkers today and I was like, oh my God, does he hate me? And I went back and I looked at the message and I was like, looking for any evidence that he hates me. And I was like, there's no evidence in this message that says that he hates me, but I still get the feeling that he hates me.
But there's no evidence that he doesn't hate me. So,
Exactly. And so that's my PMS brain because that's where
mm,
I'm at today. I'm like, so everyone actually secretly hates me and my life is meaningless. So I'll probably feel
ah,
better tomorrow because my hormones are just going to do this for a couple days. But so like
hey.
that plus the cold is I'm like, what's the point of existing like this, you know?
I always feel like that with a cold too. Like I've had the flu twice in my life, and honestly, it was great because I just slept through the whole thing. But
God, that sounds
colds keep
nice.
you awake. Like
They
it's
do.
impossible to sleep through. So you're just like, I am at this crossroads of miserable and like forced to suffer in the misery. Like misery
Yeah.
when you can sleep through it is fine, and obviously being healthy is fine. But just
Yeah.
that sweet
When you
spot of
can't
like
sleep through it, I
everything
know.
sucks and I cannot see the end of it. Even though I know it's going to come in 3 to 4 days, I can't see the end of it.
I know
So,
it's awful. So I took two Benadryl just to knock myself out so I could get some sleep because like you said,
mhm.
it's so hard to sleep with a cold. And I did, but like, and that's two Benadryl, but I only slept 7 hours. And as soon as the Benadryl had completely worn off, I was like, bing, I'm awake now. And so
Yeah.
for the last 2 nights, on top of having a cold, I've been waking up extra early because I'm only able to sleep until the Benadryl wears off.
Ugh,
So
that sucks.
yeah. Anyway, so that's why I sound and look the way I do. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, I would apologize, but I'm honestly feeling too salty for that. I'll
That's
do my
fair.
best to cut out the gross sounds.
And also, she has awesome new bangs.
Mm,
So she looks
yeah.
great and not sick at all.
Yeah, thank you, Carissa. The bangs I realized do a big reason I cut them is because for fall and winter. So then like if I want to
Mm,
grow it out by spring and summer, I have plenty of time. And I think that they're nice
yeah,
in fall and winter because it's not as hot. So I don't get like hot and sweaty all over my forehead.
right. Fair.
Although I am right now because I'm PMSing. I know it's TMI, but I don't care. But IDC, I don't care. So how many acronyms can I throw at you guys? So I am sweating for no reason, but typically
Mm,
not. But the thing
right.
is, it always makes it look like I made a bit of an effort, which is
Yeah,
nice because I haven't.
exactly.
My hair's also clean. I also
Exactly.
henna dyed it today, which so
Nice.
you can't super tell on here, but I did my roots and all my hair, so now like all the red is consistent again.
Hmm.
So
Nice.
I'm happy with it. I have
That's very
about a
good.
million things to do. So I'll wait and I'll
Oh,
get into it when we get into my week. But first, how was your week?
my week was good. Not a lot going on. The puppies are still recovering from their spaying.
Cute
And by
babies.
recovering, I mean they are ready to be back to normal and we have to stop them. So
Yeah.
so fun. They went on a walk for the first time today, so that was good. But
Aw.
they have no understanding that they had surgery, and that's just
No,
really nerve-wracking. So
of course not.
yeah. Let's see what else. I I have a red pen point.
Ooh, a
RPP from last
rapapa.
episode. Was it last episode? I think I said something about the author Terry Brooks, and I definitely meant to say Terry Goodkind. So if anyone was confused, that's why I think they are.
They're
I
both
think they're both
authors.
male authors in the
Yeah.
high fantasy adult genre. So
Yeah.
I'm just like, they're so easy to confuse. What I
Oh
was
my
talking about
God.
was the Sword of Truth series. So if anyone knows what that is Terry Goodkind. Um, but yeah, and it's like this 800, this isn't my book rec either because I'm not done with it, but it's like 850 pages and I am like right at the halfway point, but something really stressful just happened in the romantic relationship, and so I'm like, I need a break. So
Interesting.
yeah,
I love
but
that.
What else is going on? A lot of it has to do with writing updates, so I won't go into that yet. But basically, it's been a normal week. Oh, and I am not going to get political, but can I just say I'm so happy that the election happened and now there aren't going to be any more political ads.
I know.
I'm so psyched for that. So
Yeah. I'm also
normal
not going to get
TV.
political, but I am going to say I'm so mad at myself because I thought I had updated my voter registration when I moved. So then when I went to double check it to make sure I have everything I need to like take with me to vote, it said I wasn't registered anywhere. And I was like, I
Oh,
voted. I voted the
yeah.
last election. What? And so even Javi's stuff, who wasn't updated to the new address, his shows up. He's like, you're just doing it wrong. Let me check. And then he checked, like, because you can use like a bunch of information. And it's like the state just wiped me out of their voting database. So I was like, oh
Weird.
my God. And so I tried to submit my paperwork as fast as I could to get registered again. And I got registered the day of voting, like on the 8th. And I was like, heck yeah. And then it has
Yeah.
like active date December 3rd. And I was like,
Yeah.
wait, I can't,
Yeah.
what? So
You can't
I'm like,
register on voting day, I think.
yeah. And so I'm like
Yeah.
really mad at myself. I feel like a
Mm.
major hypocrite because I think voting's important and I'm so frustrated with myself. So
Ugh,
anyways, everyone double
sucks.
check that you are registered to vote. There's
It's so
my last
true.
political ad. But when you move,
Yeah.
because you'll think that you've done it. And I could have sworn I did it, but apparently I didn't. So
Apparently not.
yeah, anyways.
Yeah. One year when I was in college, I tried to cut corners and have my mom vote for me and just like I
Mm-hmm.
was like, just do this is how I want you to vote, do it. And then she signed it
Mm-hmm.
for me. She tried to like
Right, by
forge my
proxy.
signature.
Yeah.
Nope, she tried to forge my signature and they caught it. And I was like, well, you know
They
what?
caught it.
I'm really
I'm
pleased that
impressed.
this is, yeah, that they could catch something like I was like, well, my votes aren't counting this year, but I feel very confident in the election integrity. So
Yeah.
that was
Still
nice and
still
also
a
awful.
valuable experience for you.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm just really excited there will be no more political ads.
Yeah.
As of this moment, I don't even know who won anything because I'm in Arizona and nothing
Mm-hmm.
comes out until like at least 24 hours afterwards.
Yeah.
So I'm ignorantly blissful. So it's a good
Nice.
place to be.
That is a good
But
place to be.
that's
I
my week.
like
How
it.
was your week?
Um, well, I'm sick, which I've said.
Mm, of
And I was, of course, had a couple days of denial of being sick until it's gotten to the
course.
point where I can't ignore it. And mostly my week is just honestly me complaining about stuff because
Yay.
my husband comes back for a few days. My baby niece is
Yay.
coming to stay with us, and I have a business trip all in like the same 5-day span.
Oh.
So it's just really, and now I'm sick and I'm
Mhm.
again TMI, but I don't care. I'm going to be on my period, which knocked me on my ass last month and I almost couldn't get out of bed. So now
Mhm.
I have all of that, my sickness and all of that gross stuff is all going to happen on this next weekend when I need to be cleaning the entire house, baby proofing, prepping for my husband to come home. Like, I don't know, shaving my legs, maybe. I need to do my nails because they're horrendous. And I'm about to go to a professional event and I can't look like this. So just like stuff that actually like, it's not like it takes that much time each thing, but it takes a lot of effort and energy. And
Mhm.
I already am like wiped out.
Yeah.
So and I just know this weekend is going to be so much worse. So I'm trying like not to like focus on the pain, but it's hard because it's inevitable. So I'm trying to do like
Yeah.
the little stuff that I can. Like I was going to wait to dye my hair because Javi and I, for our anniversary, we're going to the Yule Ball that they're having in honor of Harry Potter
Yay.
stuff. And I'm
That's so
so
cool.
excited. I know. I'm so
Ah.
excited. So I was gonna wait to do my hair and my nails and all that until like closer to the event. So like because I did my henna, I hennaed my roots again. I was gonna wait. And so it would be like as bright as possible because because I
Mhm.
did all my hair, but my roots as well. But I just didn't was like, I gotta do this while I have energy. It takes like 7 hours. The henna has to sit
Mhm.
on my hair. So I had it all day and I forgot I had like a woman power meeting at work that I had to lead today. So I had like this bandana wrapped up in my hair. So I looked like I had no hair at all. And I was like,
Nice.
hi guys. So I'm dyeing my hair and it has to stay on for 7 hours. And they were like, you're doing what? And I was like, yeah, so moving on. Today we're going to talk about, and it was like, this is uncomfortable.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
yeah, and I had 5 meetings yesterday. So like
Oh
this
my
is just me
gosh.
complaining. Like
Yeah.
it's just been a lot and a lot of it's good. Like the I have to go to a trade show. That's what the business meeting is for. I think it'll be totally fine. I would be looking forward to it a lot more if it wasn't the week my husband, who I haven't seen in over a month, is going to be home, and the week my little niece is going to come stay with us. So as it is, I am grateful. I fly out one day and fly back the next day. So like, I'm not going to be there for very long, which is good. But part of me is like, is it even worth it for me to go? And yes, it is. It is. It's just the part of me that wants to get out of it because I want to spend time with my husband and my niece.
Right.
But it'll be good. And like I said, if the husband and the niece weren't coming, if they weren't going to be home, I wouldn't care. I'd be like excited to go travel a little bit. But it's also in Vegas, and I hate Vegas too. But I'm not too worried about it because I'm not going to be there for very long. But yeah, anyways, that's just my brain is just like on next week. It's on like everything I have to do and on next week because I'm so excited, and I am still excited. I know I just sound like I'm bitching about stuff because I am. But I'm also very excited because I get to see my husband and I get to see my niece. And we got like, my mom and I went grocery shopping, and we had to go pick up like some stuff. So we have like stuff for the baby here. She's 18 months old. So she's almost like toddler now. And we went crazy. My mom especially like would not leave the baby clothes. And so I have this giant cardboard box that is just full to the brim of like baby stuff, like baby clothes, baby toys, baby pajamas. And then I have the separate like box of like baby like baths, like games and stuff. And so I'm so excited for this kid to come home and hang out with us. And it means that, the whole family's moving down. So we'll get to see them all much more. So I'll actually get to see my sister on the holidays, which is very exciting. So a lot of good stuff, just the preamble up to the good stuff is like a lot, especially a lot for how I'm feeling at the moment. But maybe I'll feel better about it when I'm not like dying. And like, that was a timely, gross throat clear. And PMSing like crazy, where I'm like, everybody hates me and the world is ending. So yeah. Anyways, that's my week. It's only Wednesday. I feel like I've lived this week 3 times over already. It's every day I'm like, is it Friday yet? Is it Friday yet? It's not. Oh, I have 2 more days to go. So I just sound pitiful and sad. And I'm sorry if I brought anyone down, but life is still good. It's just that like, oh, it's hard right now in like the most annoying ways. Because I'm like, I am efficient. Oh, but good news is I'm back in counseling for anxiety. So that's good. It is good. She's like, it sounds like you suppress your anxiety until it causes you like problems with your physical health. And I'm like, that's exactly correct. How do I not do that? I was like, isn't that what we all do? Yeah. So that's,
she's like, no. And you're like, oh,
interesting. Yeah. She thinks I might have some friendship trauma, which I'm thinking now might also be part of why I reacted. Like when one of my coworkers sent me that message, I was like, he hates me. Like, not that we're even like, friends, but like when you have like a friendly coworker, you're like, okay, an ally when shit hits the fan. Because in any job, inevitably, you just want to know, who will back
here are the people
you
that
up.
are going to be in my corner and not throw me under the bus. Yeah,
exactly. And so I was like, oh my God, he's not, but he hates me. And then I went back and I was like, this is like a combination of PMS and like weird friendship trauma I didn't know that I had. So counseling's great, you guys. I'm looking forward to the rest of these sessions. So maybe I'll be a little less crazy. And I wish I would stop sweating. I was like 1,000,000 degrees and also freezing cold yesterday and sweating, but didn't have a fever, and I still don't. So it's just awful. Yeah. Anyways, thanks for listening to my complaints. No, it's my week. Oh, and Javi's going to get me a puppy. So there's good things going on too. Yes. Which will be nice. Because I can't remember, did I say that Brownie's going to live with my sister and her family?
Well, you told me. I think you said it on here.
Okay, I think I did. But if you guys weren't here for that episode, my dog is a chicken killer. But other than being a chicken killer, she is a very, very sweet, perfect family dog. But we have done everything in our power to protect the chickens from her. And she's just too much of an opportunist. It's too stressful. So she's going to go live with my sister and her family, which is actually perfect because I didn't know that they were also planning to adopt a dog. And they were. And they've got a little 18-month-old kiddo. And Brownie loves little kids and babies because she was raised with them. So they're like the perfect fit for each other, and everyone's very excited about it. But I was telling Javi, I was like, I'm really like kind of sad. I mean, because first of all, I love Brownie. She's a sweet girl, but also like she like lays on my chest, and she's a big enough dog that it's like this extra weight that's just like, there's something about this that is just so nice. Like it reduces my anxiety by like 50 to 75%. And I've never been someone who's like, oh, I have an anxiety animal. I've never been someone who ever thought that I would, want that or need that. And it's not that I necessarily do, but I do enjoy having the option. And so Sweet Javi has decided that he can help me he's going to find me the perfect dog. And we settled on, I think that I need a golden. And she's going to come from this. I know you guys, we don't like buying from breeders, but listen, I buy from plenty of shelters and I will continue to adopt from shelters. But I have had such bad luck with the dogs I've adopted. I cannot keep doing this. I will have an absolute mental breakdown. Plus, so to get a golden who you could certify as a therapy dog, they have to like have the certain certification and stuff. And so these doggies do. And it's this little family that has like a couple litters a year. And like you have to like pass like all these like really strict like protocol and rules and interviews to actually get a dog. Yeah. And so I'm really excited because I've always loved Goldens. I just never thought it was an option for me. And so I'm really excited. So she's going to be a companion dog and also a bit of an anxiety dog. And
Cool.
yeah, so I'm excited about that. So there's good things too. And I'll still get to see Brownie all the time. So this is really best case scenario. I'm so happy.
Yeah,
Aside
definitely could have gone worse.
My body.
That's
exactly.
Yeah.
Could all be worse. But anyways, do we have any book recs?
No. I mean, like I said, Terry Goodkind, but that's about it. I'm only halfway through. I mean, I've read 3 books in the 9-book series, and they're all good. But
yeah,
gee, are you hot, Ash?
I'm sorry, I'm like fanning myself. Yeah, I am. But I was trying to look at the book that I'm reading right now. You guys have probably heard of it. It's called The Guest List by Lucy Foley, I think.
I have heard of that. I can't picture it though. What does the cover look like?
It's like an adult mystery.
Yeah.
I think it's got like a castle or something in a storm.
Okay. Is it kind of dark?
Yeah, it's dark.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's got like yellow letters on it. And it's really, really good. I can't like fully wreck it because I'm still reading it, but I am enjoying it. And it's like it happens like at a wedding. And so it's like this like I think it's a murder mystery, which I haven't gotten far enough to confirm, but I'm pretty sure it is. And it's very good so far. So if you guys are looking for like an adult murder mystery, this one's a good bet. I can't fully wreck it. Like I said, I'll update you guys when I finish it, but I think it's a good option. I'm like 6 or 7 chapters in it, and it's really well written. So I'm enjoying it. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
What about word of the week? Oh wait, do you have a book rec?
I don't. I have the word of the week. I usually have it in front of me and I forgot, and I was like, oh no, I didn't pick one because I was getting ready for you to say it, but I did. It's right here.
Yay!
All right, word of the week is apotheosis. Apotheosis. And this is the highest point in the development of something, the climax or culmination.
Oh. Like I've reached the apotheosis of my beauty?
Yeah.
Interesting. Fantastic.
It's good stuff. Flick the bangs.
I flicked my bangs out of my face as I'm like glistening with sweat. I've showered twice today. I hate my life. Anyways, that's a really great word of the week.
Thank you. Trying to think of a way to relate it to your illness. Like this is the apotheosis
of my illness.
Yeah.
I am hoping that today is the apotheosis of my illness, but I have a sinking feeling that tomorrow is going to be the apotheosis. And I like also because we're prepping for this trade show for work. Like I'm like, I can't take a day off right now. Like we're in the middle of prepping for this thing and we don't go to all that many like shows. And so it's really important that we have everything together for this one. So I'll just be suffering. I'm literally like damp. I'm sweating. What is happening? You guys, I am disgusting. I need to go live under a bridge. I'm a little troll woman. What is happening today? Anyways, oh my God. Should we get into the theme for this episode?
Yes.
I'm so sorry.
Okay. I don't really know what to say though. I'm just like, there's only so many times I can say like, wow, that sucks, you know?
I know. So... That's why I'm like, Ash, stop talking about it. But then I'm like, oh my God. Like I really am like just increasingly surprised by how gross I am. Like, I'm like, oh, I know how gross I am. And then I'm like, oh my God, really? No, I'm getting even grosser.
Well, you know what else makes people feel gross? Query letters. That's what we're going to talk about.
Good transition.
Thank you.
Hell yeah.
We're going to talk about query letters. So if you guys you've not yet queried and you're like, oh, what do? I have this book. We're going to talk about what to do. And if you are a querying veteran, maybe just like breaking it down the way you do when you start will help, set off a light bulb for something you need to do differently to help yourself. So
yeah.
Either way.
Or maybe you think that we're wrong and you have a better idea, in which case shoot us a message. I love getting input. Or maybe you guys want to trade query letters for review because that is fun and important. So highly recommend.
Yeah. So I guess we'll just break down what a query letter is first. So if you want to be traditionally published, a query letter is kind of like the cover letter you send to an agent. It's kind of like a not a job interview, a job application.
Yes, it is a bit like that.
In like paragraph, like 3-paragraph essay form from school.
Yeah.
So basically it is 3 paragraphs usually. You like sometimes you can split them. I like to follow the letter of the law and keep it at 3, but basically there's 3 sections. I know. 3 sections, I guess I should say. And that is the introductory paragraph, which introduces your book and why you are querying that specific agent. The second section is all about your book, kind of, we'll get into it, but kind of like a back cover summary of your book. And then the third paragraph or the third section is your bio, essentially, and like your final, like, thank you for listening to me kind of thing. And basically every, like 99% of agents you query are going to want it in that format, in that way. A lot of agents now do form letters, but so it's like it's
still basically
it's
the
really
same.
like an application, but you still have to have the query letter in there as a piece of it. So it's an important part. And
did you say it needs to take up no more than a page?
Oh, yes. And it has to be a page or less long.
Which is so freaking hard. Think about it. It's kind of like the first 2 paragraphs are what you would see on like the back jacket of your book in the store, or like what you'd pick up and read and be like, oh, I want to learn about that. And in a query letter, you don't need to summarize it like beginning to end. Just like give them the most interesting bits like you would on the back jacket. And then the last one is your author bio. That has like relevant experience and stuff, like maybe how long it needs to have, like the book specs, like genre, word length, title, and then any relevant experience you have, and or a little bit about yourself if you don't have that much relevant experience.
So it is different from a synopsis, which I feel is important to say because that was something that confused me when I started, which was forever ago, and things have changed, which is really fun, and I hate it, but
it's really fun. It's awful.
I hate it so much. But because you think you know what you're doing, and then suddenly someone says it doesn't work that way anymore, and you're like, what? How long have I been off my game?
And there's a full synopsis. Well, they should, if they ask for a 1-page synopsis, it should be a full synopsis in 1-page form. Sometimes they ask for a full synopsis, and that means you could have like 3 pages to do your whole synopsis. So it's a good idea to write a version that's both, like to have a version of both, which is annoying.
Yeah. And one of the most annoying things, but understandable things in querying, is that most agents have a very slightly different and particular way they want you to do things. And so you definitely need to be careful to check their personal and their agency submission guidelines. Always follow the personal ones if they're somehow in conflict, but they should be the same.
Usually they're the same.
Like the agency might say, send us your query letter and the first 3 pages or 3 chapters. And then that agent might say specifically and a synopsis or something like that. But the synopsis is different from the query letter summary because the synopsis is going to include everything, the subplots and the ending, which is it hurts to write because you feel like you're spoiling your own book. You have to do it.
It's way harder than the query letter, in my opinion.
It is. And then the query letter is like that back jacket of the book. It's not a summary because it doesn't include the ending. You don't include the end. You just kind of set it up and say, here's why you should want to read it, the same way that the back jacket does. So I guess we can just take it beat by beat. So I already kind of said the most important part is to research agents. You can do that. Some people like use like Query Tracker and things like that. I literally just type into Google literary agents for YA fantasy because it's my genre. And a bunch will come up. At this point, I kind of just have a working list in my rejections folder that I still go
you will
on.
get that.
And they will change. So if you've queried someone before, you want to make sure they're at the same agency and that they're still even an agent. So you definitely want to check that kind of stuff. Most agencies will say you only query one agent at a time at that agency, but you can query other agents from other agencies as well. It's called simultaneous submissions.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes they'll consider a submission to one agent in an agency a submission to all agents. That's not as common, but they'll put a note in their submission guidelines. There's usually a tab that says, it either says contact or it says submission guidelines, and that's where you go on the website to see it. But like Karissa said, always check the agent's like individual profile, and what they're looking for is different. So there's some people who were on one of my old rejection lists who I'm looking up now, and they are no longer looking for YA fantasy. So they're no longer doing that. So I don't take them off my list entirely of people to go just check back in with, but they are off of my current query list. So it's important to keep up with that. And I used to have like a book of like 500 literary agents and like an actual paper book. And I went through and I like circled and I had researched them all individually, because even by the time the book had come out, and it was very recent, a lot of their stuff had already changed. So there's really no point to doing that, in my opinion. Researching online is, I still think, the best way to do it. And not only that, like you don't want to just look up like I have a list of YA literary agents for 2022, 2023. And I go and I look on their website, and some of them are like, we don't accept YA. So like, don't even believe the list that you find are correct. You still have to do your own research. And there could be others in the agency who are more suited to your book who weren't on the list to begin with. So every time I go to an agency's website, I do look at all of their agents, which I do recommend, because either you can add them to your list and then you have someone else to query, or you might find a better fit. You might find a better fit. Exactly. Where did I go with this? I was trying to jump off your point, and then I just went to a different point completely.
That's fine. Well. I was just going to say, it's very important to make sure that they do represent the genre that your book is. Yes. And sometimes this has never been my problem, but I do understand it is a problem for some people. If your book is like between genres and you're not really sure what it is, I think this is our standard for middle grade YA, NA, and adults. I don't know if people query NA. Do they? No. I think they just call it adult, or do they call it YA?
I would say YA. It depends. Some
and I would say upper YA.
Upper YA.
I would specify that. And just kind of generally in that second paragraph, give a good understanding that it's upper YA. But if you do feel like you're borderline, I think it's best to go up as opposed to down. So if you're like, I'm not sure if my book is middle grade or YA, go YA, because I just think that's better. It might depend on the agent. So if the agent you're looking into represents middle grade and YA, it's not going to matter as much because they represent both. If they say like, I only like adult stuff and really upper YA, and you're borderline middle grade YA, I wouldn't probably query them at all.
If they have a list of books that they represent, that's not a bad way to see like what kind of YA they lean towards, because sometimes I'll be like, oh, this person likes YA fantasy, and I look at their YA and it's like really young YA fantasy, like almost middle grade, and I'm like, I don't think you're gonna like this. So if there's a better option at the agency, I'll choose the other option. So always looking at what the agency, like you can, like there's often a books tab too, so you or authors we represent, you can go click on that and you can kind of see what the vibe is. Like there's Red Fox Literary does technically represent YA, but they mostly represent middle grade. And if they represent YA, it's super, super young YA. So there's no way in hell that they're going to be interested in my YA, my upper YA fantasy. So I'm not going to query them when there are other people that I could query instead with that time. So looking at also what the agency represents as a whole, and also what the author currently represents.
The agent, what authors?
What did I say? Yeah, sorry,
you said authors represent, but sorry, guys. They both begin with A. And if you do have that book tab or whatever, and you don't recognize any of the books, usually you can tell by the covers what kind of books they are. The more cartoony and the more like scene based they are, the more middle grade, the more symbolic cover, or like one face and maybe darker, the more YA,
like symbols and stuff. You can usually tell pretty quickly by looking at it, which might also be how you can tell if an agency is the right fit for you, because this is jumping ahead a bit, but like, just because if you do get an offer, that's great, but just because you get an offer doesn't always necessarily mean that the agency that sent you that offer is the right fit. And that's just, it's really difficult, I'm sure, because it's really exciting to get an offer, but I mean, it's a really hard truth. So you just want to like make sure that they have the connections that it takes to push what your book is. Cause like if Red Fox Literary, for example, was like, we want to sign you, I'd be like, I need to see some evidence that you have the connections to push an upper YA fantasy, because I'm only seeing mostly middle grade and really lower YA books on your website. Because so you just want to dig into it more.
Yeah, because that's what an agent's job is. Their job is to use their connections to help get you a book deal at a publisher. And so if they don't know the right people, then that's going to be really disappointing for you.
Exactly.
I also
Exactly.
feel like we should note that agents do take a commission. It is 15%. If it is significantly higher than that, don't even go there. I
Yeah.
would say.
15
Or
to
if they ask a reading fee.
25% is pretty normal. 15% is your best case. Never,
Mhm.
ever more than 25%. 15%
Mhm.
is better.
Yeah,
And yeah, if somebody charges you a reading fee, do
that's a
not
no.
run the other way. That is not an
Yep.
agent that you want to work with. Reputable agents do not charge reading fees, which
Yep.
is nice. And also, most reputable agents do not ask for exclusive submissions, at least not for
Right.
your query stage. There are some
Mhm.
who will ask you to be exclusive when they ask for your full manuscript. And so that just means that you stop querying other agents while they're reviewing your full manuscript. And that's more acceptable. Although a lot of them won't do that either because they get so
Mhm.
many submissions they're looking through. It's also a good idea to keep we've said to keep a running list of agents just in general, but it's a good idea to keep a list of agents. And I keep mine literally below my query letter in Microsoft Word that I copy and paste into my email. I have at the end of that document, it just says agents. And I have the name, the name of the agent, the name of the literary agency they work for, and the date that I queried them, as well as
Mhm.
any notes that I need to remember, like the one of a query sent to this agent is considered sent to the whole agency. Don't query other
Yes.
agents. Or they say, a lot of them will say, if you don't hear back from us within 8 weeks, consider it a pass. So that kind of note. Or, hey, if you don't hear from us within 8 weeks, they'll say, just give us a nudge, send us another email, and we'll make sure that we get back to you. So
Mhm.
whatever, if there's any extra note like that, it's a good idea to note it as well. And then just to keep track on there, I highlight mine in red if they're rejected. I highlight them in yellow if I'm like if I need to like nudge them or whatever, and I'm waiting on like the nudge. And green is if they ask for a partial or a full, which I have not had yet this time, but I've had
Right.
before. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, color coordinating is a good idea. I should do that. I just
it's
cross
nice.
things out and then
That
it's
works too.
confusing, but it
I
does
mean,
work.
yeah, it does. It also works. Yeah. But
Yeah.
mostly just keeping track of it's important. And if you have
Mhm.
queried someone and they have rejected it, the etiquette is very important in the literary and publishing field because it's very traditional. This is not a field that moves quickly. It took them a very long time to admit that NA is even a genre of its own. This has
Thing.
been very
Yeah.
recent. And there are still no particular new adult agents. There are
Right.
very few. Some of them might say, hey, I'm also looking for some NA projects, but they are not marketed as YA as NA agents. They're marketed typically as YA or adult fantasy agents. If it's,
Mhm.
you're doing NA fantasy or whatever. So with that in mind, the field moves very, very slowly, and you have to be okay with that and work within the confines of that. And that means etiquette's super, super important. So you never call to check up on your query letter
No.
ever. You will get blacklisted. You do not send repeat, follow-ups. Hey, I haven't heard back from you. Hey, I haven't heard back from you. Not unless they say, like, after 8 weeks, if you haven't gotten a response, you can
Right.
email us once to ask for a response. And then the
Yep.
other big thing is do not keep querying the same agent or even the same agency within a 6-month period. I mean, if it's the
Mhm.
same agency, you might be able to get away with that. It kind of depends on the agency and what their standards are. But typically, you don't want to query the same agent again within 6 months. So, like if Marilee Heifetz, who actually is a literary agent, I actually don't think I submitted her this time. I think she works for Writer's House, but I could be wrong. Like if she were to reject my book that I just submitted, then I would not, 6 months later, I could submit to her again. And or the only exception is if you do a full rewrite and your book is basically unrecognizable from what it was, then
Mhm.
okay, you could kind of do that again. That's acceptable because the book is completely different than it was. But aside from those two situations, do not query the same agent twice within
Yeah.
the same 6-month period. They don't like it. They get hundreds of submissions a day. All that's going to do is going to put a bad taste in their mouth. And you
Mhm.
never know when you're going to, want to come and try and query something else with them. So you
Right.
don't want to get a bad reputation, which is also very important because again, it's a very, very traditional field.
Mhm. It's also important to never respond to rejections.
Mm-mm.
So if they reject it, don't even like politely send a thank you anyway or anything like
Yeah.
that. They don't have the time for that.
No.
If you were polite in your initial query letter, which we'll talk about, then you're good. You don't need
Yep.
to say anything else, and you don't query to or respond to say like, well, what should I do differently, or to get feedback. They don't
And
have
they don't
time
have
for it. You're
time.
not their client.
Yeah.
And like you said, you don't want to burn any bridges and prevent yourself from having a good relationship with them in the future. Or I have been led to understand that traditional publishing is very not isolated, very insular. A lot of people know each
Yeah.
other. And so
Everyone knows everyone is the
you don't
idea.
want
Yeah.
one person to kind of say that you're being rude or you don't know the etiquette, because that might get around, and then you burn a bridge with all the other agents.
Yeah.
So, and don't
Very
stress
true.
about it too much, really. As long as you're polite, it's probably fine, but just like know the rules of etiquette so that you don't end up doing
and
something
just follow their submission guidelines. Like that's their main thing. And every time I see an interview with a literary agent, they're like, what's the most important thing for authors to remember? And they're like, follow the submission guidelines. And I'm like, okay, why are we having
so
such a hard time with this?
I'm already doing that.
Yeah, but maybe some people aren't. I guess some people aren't because they keep pushing that as like their main thing. Guys, follow the submission guidelines if you're not. Like it's better for you. It's better for them. There's no way around it. You have to. If you want them to consider your stuff, you have to.
Yep. So, and you look at the individual agents and or agency. So
yes. Yeah. Always look at the individual agents, no matter what, this why, because especially stuff like Query Tracker, or not Query Tracker. There's one like, what is it called? Like Query Manager or something. I forget.
Yeah.
It'll have stuff on there that'll say like, or Publishers Marketplace will say like, this agent represents this and that and this. That might not be true. It could be out of date. They could work for a different agency now. You need to actually, if you don't find them on the agency's website and you don't see on the agency's website what they represent, then do not consider that fact. Like you cannot actually act on it unless it is on the agency website. You need to double and triple check. Yes.
Yep. Double, triple check. Double, triple check. Why is that a tongue twister?
Yeah.
So then, did you have anything else about that?
Ooh, actually, I just had a thought. If you guys do end up submitting to like what is it, Query Tracker, through Query Tracker, because some agents now have you fill out this form.
That's the form, yeah.
The form, yeah. They'll have you copy and paste your query letter in, but they'll also have you copy and paste, or not copy and paste, but write in a bunch of other stuff. I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again because it's most relevant to this episode. Anything you write in any submission form, copy and paste it into whatever Word document you're saving that has your query letter in it, because you will inevitably be asked the same question again, and you will kick yourself if you have to rewrite all of it. Because querying is more.
If you need the tropes, if you need target audience, any of that, that takes effort to think through. Don't make yourself do it twice.
Don't. And they'll also have like which books do you think are similar, which is one of my least favorite questions. What would your main character say if they could talk to us? What's your favorite line from the book? Like weird stuff. And a lot of it's really fun, but copy and paste it because it won't be fun to come up with twice, because querying is like the most like down to business aspect of trying to get traditionally published. It's honestly not, aside from writing your query letter initially and responding to those questions the first time, it's not like a really creative endeavor. You just want to be polite and efficient, to be honest. So don't reinvent the wheel. If you did it once and you thought you did it good, save those responses in your document, and don't do that to yourself. Don't make yourself do it over again. Every time I've done it, I've regretted it so deeply.
Yeah, and inevitably you're like, this one is an exception, so I won't save it. And then the question comes up again, and you're like, I hate myself. Why did I do this?
Exactly. I have learned my lesson time and time again.
Yeah, oversave. It's fine.
Yep.
So all that being said, let's take it piece by piece through the query letter. And we don't have like a physical example, so hopefully you guys are auditory learners and can know what we're saying.
I don't have an example because it would be
verbal.
I can't give you guys mine either. Like I could read it to you, but
yeah, you can't see it broken down. So we'll create a word picture in the sound of our voices. So first off, and this is always fun for me because this is the most stressful part for me. Dear blank. Okay, never ever say dear agent. Don't ever do that. No. Even if there are some agencies that say the query email address is to the whole agency, they will look through it and see if any of them want it. In those cases, usually I still tag a specific agent just so that I have the last name to use, or to say like, this is the person that I think is a best fit, so that even other agents can kind of get a sense of what I'm going for. You don't have to, but even I actually don't know what you would do in that case. What do you do? Do you just say, dear agent?
Like for example, there's like Spencer Hill Associates is another literary agency. I would say, dear Spencer Hill Associates.
Okay.
Or if it was like Writer's House, dear Writer's House literary agents, or dear Writer's House agency, or something. Like be specific if you are not going to tag a specific agent. But in most cases, and it will say in their submission guidelines, in those situations where they have like one primary query email address, you can put the name of the agent you specifically want to query. You would put like if you were doing YA, you would put like YA query for Merrily Heifetz, and then you would do a colon, and then in all capitals your book title. You need to typically put query in the subject line of your email, as well as the genre and the book title. But your bare minimum is you need the word query in the book title. in
Mhm.
your email subject. But if it's something like that where you have to query like one primary email, either pick your agent and put their name in and then address the query letter to them, or be as specific as possible. So include the agency name or whatever so that
Mhm.
they know you've looked. Although it is typically better to query an individual agent, I think. I mean,
Yes.
that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. Typically,
I
those
tend
are
to
the
agree.
agencies too that will like share queries around. So typically, those are the same agencies that'll say, "Please don't query us again. We
Mhm.
share all of our queries around the office, so assume that a
Yeah.
no from one of us is a no from all of us." Those are typically, but not always, but typically the same agencies.
Right. And also real fast in the submission guidelines, it will usually tell you what to put in the subject line. Like if you need to say
Mm-hmm.
query or genre, if it says nothing, just put query and
Query.
genre and title. So,
Yes.
and just make sure that you're kind of doing that consistently.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but anyway, if the agent is a woman and you do not know if she is married, you put
Miss.
Miss.
Mm-hmm.
That's just like a
MS
general etiquette
period.
thing. Yes.
Yep.
If you know she's married, if in her bio it says like she lives here with her husband and 3 kids, then
You
put
can put
Mrs.
Mrs. Yeah.
And this is where I always get stressed because I want to show in even the subtle ways that I have done my research. So I will like scour the internet to see if there's any mention of
That
them
is
being
so
married.
funny.
Because
I
if
don't
they
think they
are,
care
I want
that
to put
much
Mrs. They
because I've
probably
seen
don't.
them say something about like, I don't really care. Miss is
Exactly.
like because Miss is very professional because that's what you
Yeah,
would say
Mrs.
if you met
Fine.
them in person and you couldn't remember if they were married.
Hmm.
But to that note, you do want to, whenever you possibly can, make it known that you did read not only their submission
Exactly.
guidelines, but that you did read the agent's query. And so that's where typically in that last paragraph of the query letter that's a bio, I'm skipping around a little bit, but that's usually where I'd be like, this is a like title of the book is a YA fantasy complete at 85,000 words. I thought of you for this project because I saw that you have whatever interest similar to my interest or have a passion
Right.
for, this audience, which is the exact same audience I have a passion for, or you like this book and that book has heavy themes that are, also shared with this book. And so you just want to like make some connection between the information that they've shared on their profile and the information about you and or your book. To
Exactly.
show that it's largely to show that you read it.
Exactly. You want to
They,
show in all the little ways you can that you did do
yeah,
your research.
yeah,
And so I don't know. I feel like the Miss and Mrs. is a good place to do that, but it's
it
probably they
is.
probably don't even notice. And
Yeah,
it's really a 50-50 if you're gonna mess it up anyway.
yeah, they probably don't
Um,
notice.
but I think about that. So just, generally speaking, Miss is safe if there is a really clear example or note in their bio that they are married, then do Mrs.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
it's okay if you're off.
you can even change your query letter. You can even like modify it a bit too. Like
Mhm.
if somebody, like if your book could be taken like lighter or darker, like the tone, just kind of depending on who's reading it. And or you could pretty easily skew it darker. Maybe you write a somewhat darker version of your query letter if somebody put looking for dark fantasy, right? And so
Mhm.
then you have modified your query letter a little bit. And they're probably not going to
Right.
notice that. But that's just where you
They'll
can,
be drawn to it.
yeah, they'll be more drawn to it hypothetically. And then also at the very end of your query letter after your bio, you typically would say, Miss or Mr. So-and-so, thank you for your consideration. Per your submission guidelines, below
Yeah.
you'll find the first 10 pages of my manuscript or whatever it is, or a full synopsis or whatever they asked for.
Right.
But that's a good place to say per your submission guidelines, so that they know, yes, I did read your submission guidelines. I'm doing my very best. If I made a mistake, it was absolutely an accident.
Don't
Which
say all that.
it's
That's what
not too
that
hard.
says.
Yeah, that's what that says. Don't say all of that. Just say per
Yeah.
your submission guidelines,
Right.
and then the rest is subtext.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Um, and then also, again, I'm thinking back to high school where you learn how to write emails and letters and stuff.
yeah,
Do you put a colon or a comma after dear blank?
comma.
Okay, I always did commas, and then it occurred to me that it's more professional to do colon.
Is
Does it
it?
matter?
No.
I think with business relationships, I think you're supposed to do colons, but I don't know that it matters.
Interesting. I don't think it matters. It's also,
So,
again, super, super traditional field. I don't think that
mhm,
they're going to care. A comma, I think,
yeah,
is more traditional for letter writing, and
right,
it's in the form of a letter because
right,
this used to be sent. Even when I was young and started querying, there were still agencies that required you to send your full manuscript and or your query letter by mail, by hard copy with a
mm-hmm,
self-addressed stamped envelope. Now you would be hard pressed to find a literary agency that still accepts those because everyone
yeah,
has gone
no,
green. But even when I started, some people were still accepting those, which is kind of bananas. That
yep,
is not the case anymore. You will not be asked to send something by mail, most
right.
likely ever. Um, But anyways, but that was just to say that it's the whole practice developed off the idea of sending letters. So I think that using the comma, which is more traditional of letters, I think that's what they're used to. So
yeah. True.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I stress over, even though it probably doesn't matter. So sometimes I use a colon and sometimes I use a comma. So
that is
it just
so funny.
depends.
Of all the things to stress over in a query letter, I have to say that one has not gotten me before.
I think it's because it's such an easy thing to stress about. This is something about me, is that if I feel like I might not get something I want, I find small ways to think that I have sabotaged myself, so that if I get rejected, it's because I made a stupid mistake, not because I tried my hardest and still got rejected. Goodness. So sometimes I focus on that kind of stuff to make myself feel better, but
I get that. Honestly, I mean, it's in a way, it's almost easier to like say, well, it's just because I put the wrong, punctuation mark, then they even just didn't like my idea, because it's more of like a reflection on, I used the wrong punctuation mark, than like a reflection on your book. And it's never actually a reflection on your book anyways, you guys. Like It's not. So, and that's a whole other thing we can get to maybe more at the end of the episode. But do we want to move on to the opening paragraph or?
Yeah. So opening paragraph is going to, like Ash kind of said, some kind of indication about why this is the agent that you queried. And it's called the personalization, right? And this is always really hard for me too, because sometimes it's hard to sum up why you feel like an agent would be well suited to you. Sometimes it's just like this combination of like, oh my gosh, they have all the same TV shows that I like listed on
you
their
just have like a similar vibe.
List. Yeah. And or like their picture, they're doing something fun in the picture, or they have a bookshelf behind them. And I'm like, I just feel like we get along. It's hard to pinpoint something.
Yeah.
But you need to find something.
Yeah.
And it can be something as simple as like, I know you're looking for YA fantasy with the found family trope. So I think you would enjoy my manuscript or something like that.
And see, I put that sentence in my bio at the end, but it doesn't, the order of things, honestly, as long as you have a hook where you begin like your back jacket, whatever, and as long as you have your bio at the end, the rest of it is, to be honest, that's where you have your flexibility. So whether you put your personalization at the beginning or in the bio doesn't super matter. It just matters that you do include it.
Yeah. Because really what the first paragraph needs to have absolutely is the title of your book, the genre of your book, and the word count of your book.
Yeah. Oh, hot tip straight from a literary agent also. I don't think about this very often, but I had one literary agent actually reply once and say they had liked my book, and we'd email back and forth a little bit. And they just gave me the tip. They're like, by the way, we read so many of these a day. When you make the font bigger, it's actually easier for us. And so I started like, even though I would consider, the larger font to be unprofessional looking, by Times New Roman, you guys, Times New Roman always. And standard you copy and paste it into your email. And I think it turns into Georgia or something. It's the equivalent. It's your email's equivalent of Times New Roman. Do not stray outside of it. Highly, highly do not recommend. But I have started sending them in large font, which feels unprofessional to me. But I do think about the fact, like, maybe it stands out a teeny bit from other people's, which you don't typically want to do format wise because it looks bad. But they do read hundreds of these a day. So making it a little bit easier for them to read is not a bad idea. That's the whole reason that the query letters are only supposed to be 1 page long and 3 paragraphs, ideally, because they have to read so many. So keep that in mind when you're writing it too, like just like the flow, the ease of reading. If you have a lot of made up words in your book, maybe try to avoid using a lot of them in your query letter, because that's harder, which I've been having a hard time with because there are a lot of made up words in this book. But the more difficult you make it for them to read, like, just think how tired their brains are, you guys. So tired. Just make it as easy for them as possible. That's in your best interest.
True.
And theirs.
Yeah. And that first paragraph is just kind of to ease them into, okay, put on your YA fantasy hat, or put on your adult contemporary hat, or whatever it is, because a lot of them represent multiple genres. So you just want to kind of give them an idea of what they're about to read. And so again, title, genre, word count. It doesn't have to be in that order. You also, I think this is standard, you should full caps your title.
It is standard. So I think it is.
Yeah. And then know your genre. Did I touch on this before? Know your genre. And if you're borderline, just pick one.
Yeah.
It's not really, if you're like, well, it's fantasy, but it's also kind of sci-fi, just pick one. Honestly, pick fantasy because that one I think is getting better
Easier.
traction.
Sci-fi is
But
always a hard sell, but
yeah.
fantasy, they're both a hard sell at the moment,
Mhm.
just for based on the market. But
Right.
because they're a little bit flooded with fantasy.
Mhm.
But yeah, those are the hardest sells. Sorry, guys. Listen, I also write
Yeah,
almost
same.
exclusively fantasy and science fiction. It is a very hard sell because
It's
there's
tough.
a lot. The market's already flooded with fantasy. Sci-fi is different. It's a harder sell because it's so easily cheesy, and it's
Mhm.
your audience like is not necessarily the most reliable or consistent, and so it's a bit more of a risk. So just know you guys might have a bit of an uphill battle, and I know because I'm still fighting the uphill battle, so I feel y'all. But
Yep.
just be prepared.
Same. Yes. But yeah, just pick a genre. Be as accurate as you can, but you don't need to
Mm-hmm.
include like everything about the book into the
No,
genre. You don't have
you
to say
can
like, well, it's a YA, but it's a fantasy, but it has this
no.
subplot and all. It just
You
simple
could
genre.
maybe say something like, this is a mystery with elements of magical realism,
Yeah.
or this is a fantasy with strong romantic elements.
Mhm.
And so you can kind of you can kind of basically point out your connections to the other genres by doing stuff like that. But
Right.
I would try not to get too into the weeds, especially because a lot of stuff that we write, we see it as the author. And so we can go, well, it's really like 3 or 4 genres. Okay, pick your biggest one and either just go
Yeah.
with that or pick your primary and then pick a secondary only if you can weave it in and you have room in your query letter to put it. And you can only if
Yep.
you can make it sound natural, like I think mystery with elements of magical realism or
That one's good.
romantic
Yeah.
elements. So when you say elements of, that's a good way to like kind of bridge the gap a little bit, but you frankly might not have room. The query letter is so short. I mean, if you don't have room, just don't. It's
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
And include age range and technical genre. So like if it's just an adult fantasy, I think you still put adult fantasy.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not as important there, but you want to clarify just so
No,
that the
you
agent
do.
isn't concerned that you
That
picked the
you
wrong
don't
agent.
know. Yeah, exactly.
And then with word count, don't be dishonest about your word count.
Mm-mm.
Last episode we talked about word count, and so
Yeah.
a lot of us are high on word count. I know,
Yeah.
and not
It's
like
hard.
drug high, but like we have a too high.
Yeah. I think
um,
round up to your most even number, but
mhm.
round up. Do not round down unless
Yeah,
you can actually fairly round down. Like if
yeah,
you're at like 82,300 words,
yeah.
okay,
Then you
you
can
could
round to
round down
82.
to 82,000. Exactly.
Right.
If you're at like 88,900 words, you can round up to 89,000, or even at that
Or
point, you could
90.
just say 90,000 because otherwise it's going to sound like maybe you're lying. So just like
Mm-hmm.
use your best judgment, but be super honest about word count, which by the way, like this is a little bit off topic, but Karissa edited my book for me and girl, you got my word count down 5,000 words. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you for
You're
that.
welcome.
Yeah. So I'm
It's
like,
really
whew,
easy when it's someone
feel a little bit
else's.
right. Yeah. So I feel a little bit better now because now my query letter is like 80,000
hmm
words because I think it's like 80,500 or something. So I'm like
Yeah.
80,000 words. That's good.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always sometimes I purposefully go through and do another quick edit to get it to a round number,
Yep.
like with a 0 or a 5. So if it's like 93,000, I'm like, that just sounds like I'm lying. I need it to be either close to 90 or close to
How?
95.
Oh, see, I
I
don't
don't
think it
know.
sounds like it. I
So,
think when
I
you
mean,
get like 81,000, well, 81,000, honestly, if you're like creeping up towards the edge of the next number, it sounds
mhm,
like you just don't want to say that it is. So if you're at
right.
like 88,000 or 89,000, just say 90,000. If you're
Yeah.
at like 78 or 79,000, just say 80,000. To be
Yeah.
honest, you want to also come across as sincere as possible, which is really difficult because you're trying to sell your book and sell yourself, but you need to be as authentic as you can, which is really difficult. So usually like in other fields, when you sell yourself, the idea of you being really authentic is not necessary at all. It
Right.
is so necessary when you're
It
querying.
is.
So be as honest as you possibly can while still making yourself sound really good, which is
Right.
really difficult, which is why it's very, very helpful to have someone else who either knows you or knows your book review your query letter because
Mhm.
of that specifically.
Yes.
Yeah.
And don't stress about it too much. Like if you do round, I don't think an agent is going to be like, you said this book was 85,000 words and it's 85.4. Like they're not going to call you on that.
They're
But
not
if
gonna
it's
care.
85, do not say that it is 75, right? Don't do an obvious
No.
thing just to make
If
it
it's
sound shorter or
85,
longer.
don't say 80,000. If you
Yeah.
really, really want to, and it's like 83,000, you could say 80,000. Like that's much less of a jump.
Mhm.
But like the fives and the zeros are all pretty round.
Yeah.
So I would stick with that. But like if it's 82,000, 83,000, you could round down to 80,000.
Mhm.
You know, that's okay.
Yeah,
But
just be fair about it.
definitely, yeah, just be fair. Be fair, be honest, be as
Yeah.
honest as you can. If you feel like you're lying or being dishonest, don't
Exactly.
do it.
Yeah,
That's
if you're seeking to
basically
be
it.
dishonest, no. If you're like trying really hard and you're just not sure how to round up or down, pick one and it'll be fine.
Yeah, it'll be fine. I think they just want to know that you've done your best to be honest. That
And
you've
that you
done
know
your
the
best to
market.
do your best. Yeah, that
You
you
know
know
the
the
word count,
market.
you know the genre. Yeah.
Yes, which is
So,
exactly what that is for. But anyways, yeah,
yes.
that's pretty much, I guess, your first
Intro.
paragraph, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would keep that one definitely at one paragraph. This next part is where you might be able to divide it, and I know Ash does. I wouldn't divide the first one. That's just the first paragraph.
No,
But then we
you
get
could almost do that in just one line though, too, and just not count it
True.
as a paragraph. This is where you can. I do recommend the first time. This is your first time ever writing a query letter. Like, do try to follow the format exactly so that you know that you can. And then after that, you can play with it a teeny tiny bit. It's still the whole thing is, and the 3-paragraph thing, that's just general advice. But the and it is
I follow
often
it.
easier. Yeah, it's because
Yeah.
it's just it's often a good idea.
Mhm.
But the hard rule that you cannot change to query is it cannot be more than a page. Do you do
Yes.
single spaced or double spaced for that?
I do.
Always wonder.
I think I do single space,
I think I
but
do
it
single
still doesn't
spaced as
reach
well.
a whole page. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
I think I
double
do single
space, that would be really hard.
Yeah, and I do single spaced, but sometimes so afterwards I still do the old fashioned thing where I put sincerely or thanks for consideration, and then like my name, email, phone number, and address, because that's the old fashioned thing. So like the only wiggle room I give myself, and you can tell me if you think this is a horrible idea because I'm always debating myself on it, is when my email, phone number, and address are technically on the next page. Because it's like 4 lines, and so it's hard because they're each on their own line.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
I think that would be fine because really the 1-page rule is so that the agent doesn't spend a ton of time on queries every day. So if it's just like, 4 little lines, I don't know that that's going to be. And they're not measuring it by page. They just know the general length that it needs to be.
Exactly. So. And so I think that's fine. But if it was like, oh, just 4 more lines past the 1 page, and the 4 more lines were part of the query letter, not like my signing out thing, I don't recommend that. And see, that's why I'm saying even that's just like my email, phone number, address. Even that makes me go, ooh, am I breaking the rules a little bit? I don't know.
I really want to follow them.
Yeah, exactly. So like that is how strict it is. Like you do have to be really, really careful. There's a little wiggle room when you get to the content. Like you can move stuff around in the content of your query letter, but that is about the only wiggle room you have. And like I said, bio is typically at the end. So like it's kind of hard to do that. The bio kind of has to stay where it is too.
Right.
Yeah.
So that middle part, that second section of your query letter is that back of the book jacket teaser, I guess. It's
a
not
teaser.
A pitch, but it's a teaser. Because pitch is 1 or 3 lines usually, and then whatever the query letter is. I never know what to call it. I always call it a summary. But you don't
call it a back jacket, but it's a summary. Yeah.
And basically what you want to make sure to include, of course, main character. If you have a ensemble cast kind of thing, mention all of them. I think
you have a love interest, mention your love interest.
Yes.
I think it depends on how big your ensemble cast is and or maybe how much your ensemble cast plays into the primary plot versus the subplots.
Yeah. You want to focus on the main plot and hint at subplots.
Yeah.
So like if you do have a love interest and you have a romantic subplot, don't go into a ton of detail about the way that their romance is going to work. Just say, so-and-so, this guy she's known from childhood is involved or something like that.
Yeah, you can literally typically just say like,
name
and there's
drop
some
a male
strange tension between between MC and guard Alex, blah blah blah. Exactly. And you're like done immediately.
Like, understood romantic subplot.
Yeah, exactly. They know. They read hundreds of these a day. Like they'll know.
And the same is true for like if you have a found family trope or some other kind of trope that is a big deal in your book. Subtle hints like that are probably going to be fine because you do want to focus mainly on the plot. I don't know. I tend to get about halfway through the book when in terms of things I will mention in the query letter, because you don't want to spoil anything at that point. But you want to give a good sense of where it starts and where it's going. One of the people I follow on TikTok, I think she describes it this way, where you want to focus on the main character, what they want, and how they're going to get it. And those are the things that you need to include. So even if your main character's goal changes over the course of the story, focus in your query letter on their initial goal and how they think they're going to get it. And then maybe hint in the last sentence or two, things aren't as they assumed they were, or something like that.
Exactly. See, I was going to say, I think saying who's primarily involved, what's at stake, and how either your world set, how either your setting or your plot is unique. Like I think those are the three things that was just kind of tied into that, honestly.
Similar.
It's very similar, but I think that's what, because you also want to be set apart, and you don't need to spell anything out for a literary agent. They read hundreds of these a day. Again,
they know where
very
it's going.
Subtle hint. They know where it's going. They can predict it. But I think saying who's primarily involved, what's at stake, like is this like if they don't do this the world ends, or is this like if they don't do this like her sister who was kidnapped will die, still very, very big stakes. But it kind of gives you it gives the agent like an idea of like how big is the like lens on this book. Is this like a like really like big back here, like the world is going to end book, or is this like,
is it focused?
Did Zoom think I'm raising my hand?
I don't know.
Oh my God, it does. When I raise my
hands,
speak. That was weird. I started doing like a raised hand symbol. That's so funny. Nice. I didn't know that. I don't really like that. Anyways, I'm very traditional. I wish the literary agents liked me because of that. I'm like, we have so much in common, you guys. But anyway, so the stakes and then how your book is unique. This is hard because you don't want to be like, I'm special, I'm a snowflake, I'm unique. But you do need to highlight what makes your book different than every other book in your query letter. So, and you only have about 2 to 3 paragraphs to introduce main character, prominent sub characters, and or romantic interest. Main things of your plot, basically about halfway through the book, like the big stuff, what's at stake, and then how it's different from everything else like that. So that's hard. Maybe you have a really unique magic system. If that's the case, then drop that in there. That's important. If you have a really unique setting, drop that in there. That's important. If this is a retelling of a fairy tale, make sure that you somehow include the elements of the fairy tale in there. You want to be unique, but you don't want to be like, look at me, I'm unique. So it's really, really difficult. So often the way that you write the query letter, to be honest, is also what'll make you unique, like your voice.
It's the test of your skill as a writer in a lot of ways. And I think that might be part of the reason they make you do it, to see if you can, write in your own voice about the book instead of the actual book. So
it's true. It's a huge test of your skill as a writer, and it will push you to your limit, and you'll probably get nauseous and you'll probably cry at some point. Like it's just true. It's awful. Doing the query letters is awful, and you'll question yourself a million times. And I've been doing the query letter since I was 15. And this is over a decade later. Like I still get stressed about query letters. They're still so hard. I've had professional authors, I've had like published authors look at my query letters. I've like based mine off of templates that they've given me. I've had friends review my query letters. I've written query letters for people, which is actually so much easier to do than it is to write your own query letter. But what makes your query letter unique, if there's no like, you're like, there's no like big standout element, like a unique magic system, or, like it's a fairy tale retelling that hasn't been done before. Like if there's no big unique thing, you are the unique thing. You are the only you. You are the only you who could write the story the way that you wrote it. So you need to pour all of the uniqueness about how you write and what this story means to you needs to come through in your query letter. If you are like dealing with themes about like grief in like a really unique way that hasn't been done before because it's just some insight that you have and that's something that's in the book, include that. Like whatever it is that's unique about the story and or about you and or about why you wrote the story, like that's important to include. Especially if you feel like there's nothing else that's like super unique about your book. You're probably wrong. There probably is. But if you're having a hard time figuring it out. Voice. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Voice is important. You also want to keep it like super active and engaging because they're reading hundreds of these a day as well. So like you cannot you cannot let the tension drop for a second. Like this is
Yeah.
high stakes.
One
Like
paragraph.
they need to feel the stakes that your characters feel from pretty much like the second line of your like summary area on.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I would also say don't be super direct. So we're kind of giving you some guidelines. Don't say that you have a found family trope. You can say it in your introductory paragraph. You don't say it in the second paragraph.
You
don't
communicate
say
it. You don't say it.
exactly.
Yeah.
You imply it very heavily with if it's a romantic subplot by name dropping someone as mysterious or close to the protagonist.
Yeah.
If it's something like betrayal, say, you know, something about like, but not everyone can be trusted. Don't say, and then there's a betrayal, right?
Found family, you can say like ragtag group or unexpected companions or, you know, whatever. You
have
imply
to band
it.
together.
You do not spell it out. You imply it.
Exactly.
And it is important, especially because tropes have become bigger too. Like that's a more recent thing too, where like I never used to see literary agents be like, oh, I'm looking for books with these tropes.
Right.
All of a sudden they are, which is kind of bananas. So if you see that, that's another way to like communicate, hey, I looked at your profile. Maybe when you query that agent specifically, you choose to take out one of your other sentences and you put one instead that like has some implication of the trope that they're looking for if it's in your book.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can name drop it in that first paragraph or even potentially the bio, depending on how you format it, but you don't do it in your main. And you also, this is something that I just focus on too. If you, when you're trying to, I don't know if you guys can hear the dog. Sorry.
Hi, puppies. They're so cute. Oh, but I forgot to say, you went and took your sweet doggies to get spayed. You inspired me because I keep putting off their appointments. Now my outside boys, my Winchester and Raul, have to go get neutered in December.
You're welcome.
So you gave them the gift of that. So thank you. You actually made me be like, I need to be a good mom and actually go do that, because also the neighbors will hate me if Raul gets all their cats pregnant. And we're getting a puppy who's a girl. So I'm like, Winnie, we are not having like random puppies. So
yeah, fair.
Yeah.
Query letter.
Sorry.
So no, you're okay. Tangent. So in the main query letter, if you, like me, have a favorite punctuation, I would include it as much as you can without overdoing it in the query letter. So if you're an M dash kind of guy or gal, put in 2 or 3 at least, so that the agent isn't, if they do end up requesting more material or reading more, they're not like, oh, weird, M dashes, that wasn't in the query at all.
Yeah,
it can be very tempting. Don't use
too many M dashes in a query, you guys. Well, any or not super standard, because this is one page.
Exactly.
One page, but do include them a little bit, just not, every sentence.
You need to give them a sense of your voice, but you don't want to overdo it. And I know it can be very tempting to say, okay, well, it's a query letter. I'm going to be professional. I'm just going to use periods and commas because I don't want to take any risks. But you do want to take risks.
Yeah.
And it's so hard because it's what makes you can't know which ones will pay off. Yes.
Yeah.
So I have a couple sentences where I use semicolons because that's my big punctuation, right? And I think I use probably 3 or 4 in that paragraph. It's a long paragraph. It's not like 4 sentences.
I think I have a sentence fragment in my query letter, but it's fiction and it reads well. It reads like it would read in the book. So
yes, you want to give the same tone in your query letter. You need to be as grammatically correct as possible. We've talked about this before as well. And maybe err on the side of grammatical correctness more, but you still want to
compromising your voice.
Yes, exactly. You still want to use, if a sentence fragment is useful, use it. If ellipses are useful, use them. If parentheses or semicolons or M dashes or any of those kinds of punctuations are useful, then use them and take that risk because those are the risks you're taking in the manuscript anyway. And so you want the agent to have a good sense of what to expect.
If they don't like it in the query letter, they weren't going to like it in the book, which I think is something that's important to keep in mind. Like, just because they said no to your query letter doesn't necessarily mean that it was your query letter. It could just be that they were like, there's something about the query letter that has to do with the book or about the book itself that they were like, it's just not a good fit for me. Sorry.
Bless you.
Thank you. But I think it's important to keep in mind, like, even if your query letter was like different, even if it was done completely different or written by someone else, there's still a very good chance that they wouldn't like if you didn't include like a bunch of M dashes or whatever in your query letter, and then they got to your book and then it has a bunch of M dashes and they're like, too many M dashes for me. They were gonna think that anyways, like whether you put it in or not. So like, be true to yourself, be professional, but be true to yourself.
Yes. And like Ash has kind of already said, if your book is dark in tone or if it's very lighthearted, try to communicate that in the way you're writing it as well.
Yep.
So, and that's going to be a lot of trial and error because it's really hard to write summaries like that.
It really is. And you guys don't just like write a query letter once and then just use it to like query for like 6 months. Like you really do need to be going back and like maybe not every week or every other week, but maybe like once a month, go back and just give it a glance, because you might, see something like next month where you can change a sentence and shorten it or delete it completely or just make it a lot more interesting. And have other people look at it as well. So it's hard because as your skill as a writer grows, and your skill with query letters will grow too. So you just never want to assume, oh, my query letter's done.
Yeah.
You might think that. I've thought that. It's not.
And so this is the way that I do. I just have a template query letter for each book, right? And every once in a while, I will change words based on things that agent says they do or don't want in the query letter. So if they love romantic subplots, I will emphasize that more in the query letter than I do in my baseline one. If they say that they want a darker tone or something, I might choose different words, like, a different word choice kind of thing. Ultimately, that's not going to make or break whether or not they offer you anything. It's only going to make or break if they ask for more. And so
it's like just shining a flashlight on the element that's already, you shine a flashlight. You can't shine a flashlight on something that's not there. So don't try to do that. But if you're like, hey, I do have that. Yeah, you emphasize it. You shine the light on it and you say, see, look, I do have what you're looking for, which is nice.
And so this is kind of in this paragraph where dishonesty comes in. You don't want to be dishonest. Don't say there's a subplot there that's not there. Don't hint at something being there that's not there. And do your best to hint correctly at the things that are there that that agent would want.
Yeah.
I agree. That's all I have on that one. Are we ready to move on to the third one?
Yeah. Yeah, we can move on to the next one.
Bio. I also forgot to say something in the introductory, and it could go here too. So you kind of briefly mentioned comp titles, which are similar titles to your own book. These are hard, and I feel like I have to include them because I've been seeing it around a lot more. I think it's becoming a little more of a standard to include in either place.
Gross.
And
now do I have to include them?
I know.
Oh my no.
But
see, query letter's never done, you guys.
I know they change. It's not fair. But if you find that you don't know how to do this, if you're like, well, I wrote this book because it's unique and there's nothing, I don't have any comp titles. Good advice that I have heard is to comp based on style and voice and theme, not on plot, not on subplots, not on character type. Don't try to find a main character that's similar to your character and comp that book. Don't find a plot that has the same tropes and comp that book. No. Find a book that has a similar style. This is probably going to be a lot of your favorite authors anyway, so it might be easier than you think.
Yeah, like I realized Leigh Bardugo I include, and this is difficult because when you comp a book that's very, very, very popular, like if you're going to comp like it's like Twilight or it's like Shadow and Bone, which I do occasionally add it as like similar titles, but never as the only one. So if you're going to pick a really popular book, just know you might need to include, maybe preface that with a book that's not so well known or popular. Yes. Because you don't want to seem like you're making more of yourself. And it's very frustrating. This is where it's annoying because maybe you're being completely honest and you're not trying to like pump up your book. Like I'm not trying to be like, my book is as good as Leigh Bardugo.
Right.
But
it's similar because I love her.
Exactly. But I love her. And I think that she's an amazing writer. And so a lot of her style choices are things that I respect. And I think have probably leaked into my own writing quite a bit, and some of the themes are very similar. So although I have very valid reasons, I'm never going to lead with my book is similar to that.
Yes,
I might say my book is similar to this lesser known book, and it's okay if you're like they won't even know what it is. That's okay. It just shows that you did your research. And so you say similar to this book and or this book or whatever, and you can put your more popular book in there. But
I think it can be good also to, in the way that you phrase it, say that it is written in the style of or with a similar atmosphere to, instead of just saying it's similar to Leigh Bardugo or whatever, because then
with similar thematic elements.
Yeah. But if you just say it's similar to this book by this famous author, the agent's going to be like, oh, they think their book is going to be as famous as this book, even if that's not what you're trying to say. So be very specific in the way that you phrase it. If it's thematically similar, if it's stylistically similar, emphasize those. Because those are also, this is debatable, but that's probably what agents care about even more than plot. I mean, your plot obviously needs to be good. That's kind of what the book is about. Your characters need to be good, but usually make or break points in terms of loving or just liking a book is style and atmosphere and theme.
Sure. I mean,
So,
that's like your overall goal with your query letter is
mhm.
to give an agent a really distinct impression of your style and your
Yep.
audience. Because
Yep.
if they like your style and they represent your audience, then as long as, then I assume that at that point, that's probably when they're going to be like, okay, I'd like to see a partial or full manuscript. And then
Mhm.
it's up to your plot to really sell the book and go, okay, this is a great plot. Okay, this is a great book. It's, well done. It's put together.
Mhm.
I like it. We'll do it. But that's not how you initially get them to ask for your partial or your full. It's because you've convinced them that you're about, not even convinced them, that you've shown them your style, like the truest version of your style, and it's unique and they connect with it. And just because an agent like says, hey, no, we don't want your book, does not mean that they don't like your style. And or maybe they don't, but it doesn't mean that
It's a
that
bad
your
book.
style's bad or that your
Yeah.
book is bad. It just means that they're not vibing with your style. So
Mhm.
never assume that you know what a literary agent means when they reject your book. I
Right.
promise you don't. So never assume anything about that. It's just like a nightmare and also ridiculous and impossible to do. Um,
Right.
but I think the main point of the query letter is to communicate your style. And that's the thing
Right.
where, like, if you're being authentic, nobody's style is the same.
Right.
So if you're being authentically you, and you have to put in the work to present it in the best light that you can, to do your story, what's the word I'm looking for? To do your story justice. So you do
Yeah.
have to put in the effort to do your story justice. But as long as you are being true to yourself and your style as a writer, like, you're doing your
That's
best.
what you're supposed to do.
You still
Yeah.
may get hundreds of rejections, but you're doing your best. And that's the best you can do with query letters, to just do your best.
True.
Yeah.
And yeah, like with comp titles, using more than one is probably a good idea anyway, because no one's style is the same as anyone else's. So
Yeah,
saying it's written in the
exactly.
same style as this book, probably not true, even if it's
Mm-hmm.
similar. So 2 or 3. I
Yeah,
would
I
say
agree.
2.
Two
I
to
don't know
three.
that I would go 3, but
3 is hard because of the whole fact that it has to be one page. If you have more room, you probably could.
or they're super short titles.
Yeah, or if they're really short titles. But for the most part, because you're usually like trying to cut down sentences in a query letter, 2 is probably your sweet spot. And then you can
Right.
still, if there's a more popular book, you can still include it, but like include it second and be specific,
Mhm.
like similar
In the
thematic
style,
elements,
or
similar
yeah.
stylistic elements. But yeah, don't
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 oversell
overdo it.
yourself. You
Yeah.
you want to sell yourself, don't oversell yourself.
No, because they're
Humility
gonna
is
assume that you're overselling yourself. That's why
yes.
you don't lead with it. Even if you're like, I'm not, you just don't want them to assume it. So
Mhm.
just
True.
best not to.
So yeah, the com titles can go. I typically put it in my intro paragraph, but it could probably go, if you weave it
I
in
would put
right,
it
in
in
your
my
bio
bio
paragraph.
paragraph. Yeah.
Right. But the main point of the bio paragraph is obviously to talk about you. I write it in first person. Do you write it in first person?
I do. When they
Okay.
request a bio for sometimes in the query tracker, or sometimes
Mm-hmm.
as like secondary stuff, like if they request a partial, sometimes they'll request a full author bio. So sometimes I send those in third person.
Mm-hmm.
But the one in my bio, because it's a letter signed from me, I always put it in
Right.
first person.
It's a little awkward in third, I would think. So
Yeah.
I would go first.
I would. If they're requesting additional material, you could send it in third person or first person. Like, there's not really a specific rule about that, except that the query letter probably should be first person, I would think.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree. And then you just want to make sure to include anything relevant. So if you are writing a YA fantasy book and you are an engineer at night, don't mention it.
Not
I guess you wouldn't be an
necessary.
engineer at night. You would be an engineer by day. Anyway,
Yeah.
don't mention your career. That has nothing to do with the book, right?
It has
If
nothing to
you
do with it.
are, I think if you are something like an English teacher
Mm-hmm.
or a creative writing professor or something
Mm-hmm.
like that, you can mention that, because that's a
Yeah.
certain expertise. If you are
Or
like
an
Ash and I,
influencer with thousands of followers, like,
yeah, true.
yes. And if you have any kind of like platform or like marketing,
Mm-hmm.
like a step
Social
above someone
media.
else, yeah, social media
Mm-hmm.
stuff. If you have,
Um,
if it's an impressive number, like it needs to
right.
be
I have a
well
thousand
over
followers.
1,000.
That's
Yeah,
not that's bad, but it's not a lot.
it's not enough. Yeah.
And if you're like me and Ash, I phrase that. Is it Ash and I? I think it's Ash and me and Ash. If you're like
I don't
me and
know.
Ash, we have English lit degrees. That's relevant. If you have some
Mm-hmm.
kind of a degree in publishing, in writing, in literature, something like that, mention
Relevant.
that.
If you're like, I have a business degree, it's
Maybe marketing
maybe
specific.
yeah, if you could
Maybe.
swing it that way. But if
Yeah.
you're like with a specialization in marketing, and or if your
Mm-hmm.
current job is in marketing, have
Mm-hmm.
a business degree and currently work in marketing, you can maybe swing that because it
Mhm.
has to do with how you would have to, help promote your book, because
Market.
spoiler, authors have to market their own books a lot, even when
Right.
you are traditionally published. So they do
Right.
want to know that you're willing to commit to that as well. Sometimes the older forms, I haven't seen it in a little while, but the older forms would say, are you willing to have social media profiles?
Mhm.
Are you willing to go to events to promote your book? Like they'll literally ask you if you're willing to.
Mhm.
And I'm always like, yes, guys, the answer is
Yeah.
yes. The
This is
correct
my
answer
whole
has
life.
to be yes.
It needs to be
So
yes.
yeah.
But yeah, so any kind of degree or job that is relevant to the fields, that's fine. And we are talking fiction queries. Nonfiction is
Oh
different.
yeah, it's different. Those are called proposals, and they're
Yeah.
very different. Do not come to me for a nonfiction book
Yeah.
proposal. I can
They're
edit
different.
it for you, like text wise, but I
Mhm.
cannot help you format that thing, and I do not know what's typically included.
Right.
Yeah.
And the difference between nonfiction and fiction queries, aside from being called a proposal versus a query, is that in nonfiction, you need to have some kind of background or credentials. In
You
fiction,
really
you
do, yeah.
don't. So if you're sitting there and you're like, well, I don't have any short stories published, I don't have a degree in anything similar, I don't have a job related to it, that's fine. Just don't talk about it and make your
Yeah.
bio paragraph as quick as possible.
This is where maybe you can, if you need to pad your bio paragraph, maybe you decide that you want to put your personalization note in your bio paragraph. And then
Yes.
you want to include 2 to 3, comp titles.
Mhm.
So just pad it with other things that show that you have
Yes.
done your research. So they're still learning something about you, even if you're like,
Mhm.
I don't have any other relevant things, but hey, I'm committed to doing this right. I wanted to respect your time. I am trying to do my best to understand the industry. So they're still learning about you. They're like, oh, a responsible, intelligent person who's doing their best to be up with what's, going on with market trends and stuff, and who, has looked at my profile. That's cool.
Exactly.
And or if you were like, oh, you're from Oregon, I'm from Oregon, like whatever it is. I'm not from Oregon, you guys. I lived there for a while. So there was a lot of agents I would find who are like, used to live in Portland, Oregon. And I'm like, oh my God, no way.
Same.
Which if your query is already packed, if it's not relevant to your book, you don't need to be like, oh my God, me
Right.
too. But like if you have room in your bio, better to put that than to put something that's not really relevant to your writing career.
Right. Yeah, the more relevant, the better. It's more important to be relevant than to be impressive.
Yeah.
In this part of the letter.
Yeah. Very, very true.
So, I mean, I would recommend trying to find something. I mean, when like Ash, I was 15 and I started querying. I had like nothing, but I had been to a lot of book events, right? So I live in Tucson. We have the Tucson Festival of Books. I'd been to a lot of panels with authors, and I would mention that just to be like, hey, I'm trying to keep up with stuff here. I'm learning and all of this.
Yeah, exactly.
So something, if you've been to a conference, if you've been to an event, if you, like have met an author or anything, I don't know,
You're
if meeting
really
an author,
active on book forums online. If you work
yes.
freelance as an editor, like, or if you have once or twice, if you have an interest in it, like, just be honest. You don't want to oversell yourself, but you do want to sell yourself. So don't be afraid to like talk good about yourself. Just don't make stuff up. As long as you're not making stuff up, you're fine.
Yep. So if you have nothing, it's okay. Just come up with some padding for that paragraph to
just pad it.
So
There's
it's
plenty
there.
of stuff to pad it with. So, and then, I mean, maybe you just have a shorter bio paragraph, and that means you get to have a longer summary paragraph. Good for you. Congratulations. That's awesome.
It's awesome for you. Not for me.
Seriously.
Not that I have a lot in my bio, but I would take any amount of space.
My bio has gotten longer since I've had to add stuff like has, worked as an editor for so long.
I had the podcast now. So.
Yeah, I've got the podcast. I've got both podcasts now. I have a marketing manager as my day job, if you guys didn't know. And then
you can
ghostwriting. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You can also, like Ash said, she kind of puts it at the end separately, but I put my phone number and email address in the bio paragraph. So that's also a way that you can pad it. So I just say something like, thank you for your consideration. If you are interested, you can reach me at these places. And that's obviously in sentence form. It helps pad your paragraph.
And so what I always do after my bio paragraph is I put a separate line, which for me is like my goodbye line. And I usually say Mr. or Miss, and then whatever their name is, to just restate it. So like they can see this is not just like a form query. Like I individualize this. I have looked at them. So Mr. or Miss so-and-so, thank you for your consideration. And then if they ask for additional content, like a summary or 10 pages or 3 chapters, whatever you say, per your submission guidelines, you'll find the 10 pages below. Typically, you'll be asked to copy and paste additional material into the email. You will almost never, ever be asked to send it as an attachment unless they're requesting a partial or a full. So just know that that'd be kind of weird. Yeah, do not do that. They won't open attachments. Do not do that. You might, again, get blacklisted for all the wrong reasons. So you can just say, per your submission guidelines, you can find these pasted below. If not, if they just ask for a query letter, because some places do, I usually will add, instead of that, I'll say, Mr. or Miss So-and-so, thank you for consideration. Please let me know if there's anything else you'd like to see. And then next line, best, my name, all of my like email signature stuff, which is like, phone number, email, address. So some kind of signing outline, whether that's a part of your bio paragraph that just says, hey, thanks for taking the time to read this.
And that's what I do. Right.
Yeah.
And it's always good to say thank you and to thank them for their time, because if nothing else, they did spend time on it.
They did.
So
yeah, I used to have a more sappy line that was like, I'm truly so grateful you spent the time to read this, blah, 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 which is true. And I am genuinely grateful that they've read it, but they're going fast. So I've started to try to go, thank you for your consideration. Or thank you for your time and consideration. Let me know if you need anything else, or thank you for your time and consideration. Below you'll find, per your submission guidelines, the first 10 pages in a summary or whatever. Right. And you say best, your name, whatever your contact information is, if you haven't included it in your bio paragraph, and you send, and then you just cross your fingers. You write it down in your little list, so you have it tracked with the date that you sent it, and you're like, fingers crossed.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then
you go listen to our episode on query apathy, I think. Because you are probably going to be in for a
some
emotional
rejection.
Roller coaster.
Yeah. So much fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, and if this is confusing, or you're still like, I don't know what to do, you can look it up online. Just type in how to write a query letter, and it'll kind of break things down in the same ways. Just things to consider. It's okay. Stick to the format as much as possible, breaking out a little bit when it is useful to the tone and the things you're trying to say. Go for it. Comes to the last paragraph, there's a lot of stuff you can do with that. Don't stress about it too much. And the intro just needs to make sure that it's interesting enough for the agent to read on, and that is giving an accurate picture of what they are going to be reading on.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think if you're going to break like the standard formatting rules in any way, which like we said, you can do a little bit, I think just think about, does it serve your book, and does it serve the literary agent in the fact that they're sitting down reading hundreds of these a day? If it's going to make it harder for them to get through your query letter, or it's going to be longer, or it's going to be in like a format that kind of throws them, don't do it.
Right.
Don't do it. Even if it does serve your book, it needs to serve your book. And it also needs to be something that does not make it harder for the agent to read your query letter, and or even makes it easier. And then I think you're probably okay. Do not go past the 1 page.
No,
don't do it. That one is a hardcore. You cannot. And always personally address your query letters to the agents. That is a must. Always follow submission guidelines. That is a must.
Don't leave things out or add things. So if they say synopsis, give them the synopsis and not the first 10 pages. If they say both, do both. Don't leave one off.
Now give them exactly what they ask for, and be honest. Don't lie about what's in your book. Don't lie about your experience. But aside from those hardcore rules, you've got a little bit of flexibility. You want to make sure you have your bio. You want to make sure you have your age range, genre, word count. You want to probably throw a couple comp titles in there, where those are comparative titles. I don't know if we said specifically, but they're books that are similar. A comp title is a book that is similar to your book in one way or another.
Yep. It'll help them with marketing. When it comes to going to the publishers, as well as then once the book hopefully is published. So
exactly. So as long as you've done that and you've thrown in like your like back jacket description or summary or whatever you want to call it, you're good to go. You just have to have all of those pieces. How you want to arrange them within that 1 page is a little bit fluid, but you have to have all of them in there. So that's that. That's query letters. If you guys want examples, I can send you some. You guys are welcome to reach out to us, and we can send you some, because it's hard.
They're not easy, but they're also probably harder than they need to be, because you want so badly for it to be accepted. So.
Yeah. Very, very, very true. Was there anything else we want to say about query letters?
Nope. I think that was it.
Sweet. All right. Well, do you want to tell me how your writing's been going this week?
Yes. So I think I said last week I was off to a late start with Nano, because I had been working on the other book that I got to send the full in. And today, not today, Over a 3 or 4 day period, when I am writing and I come across something that I don't have a name for, or I don't know what, like if I'm like they're going to be eating food and I don't know what that food is yet, I put a little note in, right? And I do parentheses locus, LOCUS, because that is Latin for place. So it saves my place. And you can use any word you want. TK is what a lot of people use on TikTok, because TK is not a combination that appears in the English language. So you can then do a search for it later and find all the spots where you need to fix things. That's what I do. And I had this, literally woke up in the middle of the night, fear that I had forgotten to delete one of those from the manuscript I had sent in. It's like, oh my gosh, I have this note still in the manuscript. And I was like, I can't do anything about it. So I just said to myself, I know. I was like, don't even look at it. You're just not going to touch that manuscript.
Oh my God, I know that feeling.
You're like, later, I made a mistake. Still so stressed. I know. I was still so stressed. So I was like, you know what? I'm in a good mood. I'm going to look. I'm going to see if it's in there. And I went in and I searched and it's not in there.
Oh,
so
nice.
I sent it without that stupid mistake. And I was like, oh, thank goodness.
Oh, nice. I've sent in full manuscript requests that have like double periods or like repeat words. And I don't know till after. I'm like, I hate myself. Oh my God.
It's the worst. But this was a happy story because it did turn out that I had not done that. So anyway, after I did that, I was able to focus on Nano, and I have started, and I am late, but I am catching up because this is something I'm realizing about myself more and more. I am a binge writer. I can crank out 10, 15,000 words a day. I cannot do a daily word count. And I think this is why I've always struggled with Nano. I can't write 16,000 a day. I can't even say I'll write 3,000 a day. Because
I'm more of a binge writer too.
Yeah, the second I set a goal, I am too much of an overachiever. I have to not only meet, but I have to like double that goal. So even if I set a goal for 100 words, I'm like, I still need to get to 1,000. And I focus too much on the word count. So I've just decided I'm a binge writer. If I am in the mood to write, I will write, and I will try to crank out 10, 15,000 words because I can do that. And then I will take a break for a couple days. Or do a couple days in a row and then take a break. So I did nothing for, well, within 8 days, I did nothing for 7. So I did work on one of those days. And then I've started writing. I wrote yesterday and I've written today, and it's turning out really well. And I really like it. I'm about 3 chapters in. I have 3 chapters done at this point, and it's about 10,000 words ish. And I'm also going to tell this little story just because I feel like I want to. I am struggling. I struggled. I got past it finally with this one scene because I had to write this scene in chapter 3 where one of the characters is like in the aftermath, not the event itself, but in the aftermath of a sexual assault. And I have to. It's the catalyst for the main character. Like, this is what I need to do now. And it had to be something really high level. It couldn't have been murder, but it had to be really high tier level evil stuff. And so that's what I went with. And I was writing it and I realized I was so emotionally distant from it as I was writing it. And if you're a writer, you know, the thing is, if you don't feel emotion when writing it, people won't feel emotion when reading it.
True.
So I was like, okay, I apparently have to take a step back and like torture myself with the reality of what that would actually be like if you like came across someone like that.
That's awful.
Which was awful, but I do, and it's a first draft. I could have easily just said, insert this scene here and then moved on, but I couldn't. I had to fix it. So I finally did that and it feels good. I feel like at least future Karissa will have a pretty good time editing it. I think all the information is there. I think the general flow of the scene is there, if not maybe all of the emotion. So that was fun, but I did that like an hour before this podcast. So
oh my God, girl. So you came into this podcast with that. Good gracious.
Like I'm very good at compartmentalizing. So that's what I had to do. And sometimes it's hard to turn off. And so I realized, I was like, okay, you need to turn this on so that you can write this scene. But like, who wants to do that? If you don't have to, who wants to deal with that? But sometimes you have to when you're a writer.
So like me, this is exactly what my counselor's trying to help me with. She's like, we need to turn back on the feelings. And I was like, no. We keep them turned off. But it does make writing a lot harder. Yeah.
You have to have the emotion when you're writing or else readers won't feel it. So Yeah, I mean, it's fine. I'm okay. It's not that intense of a scene. Like when I say
Hmm.
that, it is a really intense thing that happens to this person,
Yeah, but the
but
scene itself.
it's the aftermath, not the
Yeah.
actual event. So
Yeah.
it's like more mellow than you're probably imagining the way I'm describing it, but I still want the
Hmm.
emotion to be valid and stuff.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
that makes
anyway, that's my
sense.
rating update. So now I
Fun.
get to go into like the fun scene afterwards where
Nice.
main character is now like, I am going to destroy things. So that's exciting.
Hell yeah. That is
Yeah.
exciting. My writing updates are, I was gonna say I don't have any. That's not true at all. So Carissa went through and she did like a really thorough edit of my book. By the way, have you ever thought of a career in editing? Because this is the best edit I've ever received, and I have paid
Oh,
a lot of money for an
thanks.
edit before.
Thank you.
So yeah, anyways, it was amazing. It's the best feedback I've ever gotten. It was
Oh,
amazing. So I took almost all of your advice. And
yay.
so I went through and I changed stuff and I went through like word by word too. And so it did take me a few days to go through all of that.
Mhm.
But it's good now. Like, I
Yeah,
think it's like
yay.
much better than it was even. Like I can't believe how, different, because like you cut out basically 5,000 words essentially just
Mhm.
like by rewording things. And I can't believe like what a difference those like 5,000
Right.
words made. But it reads like totally different now and it's awesome. So thank you for
Yay.
that. So
You're
I finished
welcome. I'm glad they were
that.
useful.
They were very, very useful. So I'm super psyched. And then I think I said last time I was gonna do NaNoWriMo. I didn't expect myself to get sick, and I didn't know my
Yeah.
husband was going to be coming home on the same week I had to
Fair.
go on a business trip. So I, not that I want to bail you guys, and I'm still going to try, but I think I did say I'm going to do my best. I still am. I just had to get like a bunch of like house stuff at least kind of situated before I can just like completely like crash really hard.
Mhm.
But I did completely outline, I think I said this before too, this book that I want to write that's a standalone that has nothing to do with anything else I've written, and it's a sci-fi. I think it's awesome. So my hope is like I'm looking at my to-do list on my phone and I'm like, okay, I think all the stuff that I can do is done. So maybe that means I get to write. So I actually might get to write some of that
Yay.
tonight, which would be exciting. We'll see. I have to edit
Sweet.
this episode tonight also and eat.
Right.
So maybe tomorrow we'll see, or when I'm laid
That's
up this
soon.
weekend. But
Right.
I want to at least get some of it written this month, which is my goal, which sounds like an underwhelming goal, but it's a
It's a
pretty
goal.
challenging goal for
Yeah.
me. For
That's
my list is pretty
progress.
intense this
Yeah.
month. So I'm still planning to do that and I'm still excited about it. But
Yay.
I'm sick, so I'm also exhausted. So I've been passing out really early at night.
Yeah.
So if I usually I would stay up late and just keep writing like later into the night, like because I'm like passionate and excited. I don't know that I can because my body's not gonna let me. But
Yeah.
I might give it a shot to do that tonight. If not, I'll try it tomorrow. But that's pretty much my writing update. So and I send out some more queries, so that's exciting, I guess. Because I can
Right.
always do that when I'm sick and my brain doesn't want to work, because it's not creative energy
It's more
really.
professional than creative. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I can do that when I'm sick. So that's pretty much my writing update.
Cool. I
Yeah.
hate how much being sick just infects every part of your life. It's not like you can say, okay, now I'll rest and then I'll wake up and I'll do stuff. You're like, everything is affected by this. It's
Yeah,
the worst.
exactly. It's really, really frustrating because I was like, now that I have like I had a couple hours last night and I was like, I should write. And then I was like, I can't stay awake. Like my
Yeah.
body is so tired. But then I was so
Need to
uncomfortable. I had to
rest.
take Benadryl to stay asleep. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's not the most fun, but whatever. I shall live. I shall live on. Is there anything else you want to say about writing?
No.
Sweet. Well, if you guys want to keep up with us during the week, you can do that. You guys can follow us on Instagram and TikTok. We are the Scripturient Society. If you guys actually want some templates for query letters, feel free to reach out on either place or to email us at contact@storysirenstudio.com. That's our production company. We can send you some templates or we can look over your query letter. I promise we will not tell anybody what it says. Because that's just it. This is basically just a writing group. So we can chat about whatever you guys are working on. We can chat about what we're working on with you guys. That's what the whole point of having a writing group is. So we are here for you guys. If you have a question about query letters or anything else, or if there is something you specifically would like us to do an episode on, just let us know. We can totally do that. If you guys want to support the pod, you can go to patreon.com/storysirenstudio.com. And you can also just comment on there for free, but you're welcome to join the tiers. You can also get bonus content to our sister podcast, That Pretentious Book Club, Or maybe more to the point, you can go to the scripturient.society.com or storysirenstudio.com. It'll take you to the same place. And you can check out our merch. We have some really cool Scripturient Society merch. So if you guys are a writer and you want to look awesome, go check it out. Bonus is you support us. And you guys can always leave a review below for free. That's another way to support us. And we love it. And we love hearing from you guys. So that's everything that we've got. Until next week, keep writing.
And we'll see you on the next page.